Hey, Karu. This is going to be about a 15-minute long video, and what I've done here is I've cut together all of the time-lapse footage that I took on our trip to Wales. Now, I have to explain to you that when I got my new phone, when my old phone died when we were driving across country, my new phone had software that allowed it to do time-lapse. So, of course, it was a new toy, so I took a lot of time-lapse. And some of it's pretty cool, others isn't, but yeah, so there's a bunch of footage here of time lapse, and this is sequentially through the trip, so you get actually a tour of many of the places we went through time lapse. Anyway, a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, the play that I was just in. I posted my part of the play. That was my entire part of the play, playing the ukulele while Nick sang, and I sang a couple harmonies, and it was fun. It was nice. And then I posted Taryn's a little bit as well. I posted a unlisted video with the entire play so that I could share it with the cast. If you want to watch it, you're welcome to. It was a very funny play, very well received anyway. And the coolest thing about it was that I only went to like 4 rehearsals. I had to work my butt off kind of not in rehearsal to learn the song. And actually there were a couple other songs that I was supposed to do that got cut, and I spent a lot of time trying to learn one of them before it was cut. So anyway, it was fun. Good time was had by all. But the main thing I want to talk about in this video is the U.S. men's national team in soccer. And honestly, I feel like I was so frustrated with Jurgen Klinsmann's coaching and the things I felt he was doing to the team that I just had trouble watching them over the past 4 years, really. And it has not been a pleasant experience for me watching the team this last 4 years. There have been times it's been really fun to watch Christian Pulisic coming along and improving, but I feel like one of the most frustrating things about the U.S. getting kicked out of the World Cup, not making it, is that it gives license to all these people who are whining, complaining that their pet peeve is what the problem is. And I realize that, I have opinions about what the problem is. But I think fundamentally, and you may disagree with this, I'd be interested to hear, I think with sports, fundamentally the way sports work is that, you have a distribution of outcomes for any given set of events that are in essence random. I mean, everything's determined, but like you look at Omar Gonzalez and that own goal, they're playing on a horrible wet pitch. The ball takes a funny skip off the grass and goes off his shin and into the goal. That's an eventuality that you can't really prepare for. It's that was sort of a random event, and you can say, oh yeah, he should have done a better job judging it, blah 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 blah. But the reality is they knew that was going to be a wet pitch. They knew it was going to be bad. It was submerged underwater 2 days before the play. And Trinidad knew that by playing on a pitch like that, it would negate a lot of the skill advantages that the U.S. team had. So anyway, my point is not to make excuses for the loss, but that when you prepare a team, when you're trying to win, one of the things that I think Bruce Arena does really well is identifying the things that the team can control and focusing on those things and taking care of those things, and then and then recognize that there are things that are out of your control. There are physical things. Players have, they're human beings, they're machines. And so you eat a bad meal or you get something, something's not quite right in your body, and you're not going to play as well. And you can have there's a distribution of possible performances under those circumstances, but you can't control a lot of those circumstances. And so the job of the coach and the players is to try to prepare the team to make the best decisions in the moment that will increase the probabilities that things will break in their direction, that all those things they can't control will not push the outcome in an adverse direction. But even if you do all those things, you may still lose. Even if you are completely prepared and ready and do all the right things, make all the right decisions, you still could lose, and things could go badly. And because of that, it's often hard to judge whether or not what was done was correct. And it's really easy to sit back and always say, well, they lost, therefore they did everything wrong. And that's what frustrates me about this. And the thing is that, like, I could look at, like, what Jurgen Klinsmann was doing and, like, what he was doing in practice, what the players said he was doing to prepare them, and I could say that's wrong. Obviously, he wasn't putting them in a position that was increasing the probability that things would work out for them. And, he was trying to accomplish certain things, and I understand that. There's been this huge push in U.S. soccer by fans, and players like to play prettier soccer, to play more skillful soccer. And, if you look, I know how to coach, like, a kids team, youth team, to make them better than their skill level. And what you do is you pull them together, you drill them on team defending, and you make them good team defenders, because defending is easier than attacking, when you're destroying, your opponents. So if you have a well-drilled defensive unit that understands what the other players are doing, you can actually beat teams that are much better than you if you just systematically stay disciplined and sit back and then take advantage of your chances. You get a fast kid who can get forward. And that's kind of how the U.S. has played, from 1990 through, Bob Bradley, 2010, let's say. And then, when Bob Bradley was out, Jurgen Klinsmann came in, and everybody said, a lot of the fans were saying, look, we knew that was great. It was great. Bora Milutinovic, or whatever, how you pronounce his name, came in and instituted this style of play, and Steve Sampson followed up with a similar play. Actually, Steve Sampson tried to do too much, which is why we got so hammered in the 98 World Cup. Then Arena went back to sort of that core, and Bob Bradley kind of stuck with that core. And when Klinsmann came in, he helped the team learn to build out of the back and pass out of the back. And I felt like the first two years or so, you could see the team growing and making progress, moving to be a little more sophisticated, not play that bunker counter style. But the reality is that we still aren't that good. We're better than we used to be. I firmly believe even this group of players that didn't qualify is sort of better than the group in 2002. But I feel like what happened was, Klinsmann got caught up in trying to make better players, right? So he was all about challenging players, and he was like, if you make the players uncomfortable, you challenge them, they grow, they'll be greater players. And anybody who didn't, and so he felt like part of his job was to make things harder on the players, and he deliberately did that, and he talked about it, and the players talked about it. And the whole thing with, I think the reason he kicked Donovan off the team was because Donovan looked at him and didn't buy into that, and said, this is stupid, this is a waste of time. You need to, you're not, and I tend to agree with that. At the national team level, you're not going to make players better by, for instance, early in this World Cup qualifying, when we lost to Mexico at home, he threw out a bunch of players in positions that they'd never played before. He did the same thing throughout his tenure. He put Omar Gonzalez in as a defensive midfielder in the World Cup. And it's like, sure, that's an interesting tactical move that may have some benefit, but unless you prepare the player for that, you're not actually helping the team by throwing him out there. Maybe the player will grow from having that experience of being in the World Cup and being thrown out there and asked to do something that he's never been prepared to do before. But, that's you're not, going back to my initial thing about setting up the odds, and you're not putting your players in positions where they're likely to succeed. And there's multiple cases of that. Well, then, the other thing that I felt like happened was, Bradley and Arena, in particular, always had our teams in amazing shape. They were always incredibly fit. They looked at, they used scientific approaches. They brought in training. They used metrics to track the players. And Klinsmann, and they were always the most fit team. If you look at the 2010 World Cup, the players who ran the furthest, the top two were Michael Bradley, then Landon Donovan, and then after that you had like Clint Dempsey was in the top 10, I think. And so you had these players that were in great shape, that were working incredibly hard, and had this incredible work ethic, and had this dedication to team defending. And I felt like Klinsmann came in, and he brought in a bunch of European players that weren't raised in that atmosphere, that he deliberately encouraged not to stick to that. You look at the way Jermaine Jones plays the game. Jermaine Jones is an incredible physical specimen and has these incredible tools, and he could dominate a game when he was in great physical shape and could do things. But he didn't. He was undisciplined. He didn't play a role, and he cost the team. He exposed the team to weaknesses. And if you look at like the 2014 World Cup, where the Galaxy beat the Revolution, and Jermaine Jones was playing for the Revolution, Donovan essentially took Jermaine Jones out of that game by getting him to make bad decisions. Where Donovan played, Donovan actually moved around and kind of worked as a decoy that entire game, and Jermaine Jones followed him, and Donovan essentially took him out of the game, and got him, to make some decisions that weren't good, that exposed the back line. And when I look at this team and the way that this qualifying went, I feel like we're reaping what we sowed, over the last 4 years. Where we used to be a team that was always better than the group of players, and now we're not as good as a team. And I think that a lot of that is the mentality. We had players who didn't expect, to win and get through, who knew that it was going to be a battle, who had been through these horrible, horrible experiences and managed to get through, and actually figure out what it took to win, what the little things that it took. And a lot of that was the commitment to one another, the trust of one another, the understanding that when you needed to up your game. And, you look at players like Donovan and Frankie Hayduck and DeMarcus Beasley, and these were guys who could do that, who were willing to, subvert their own glory in order to get the team to win. And, I don't see that in Clint Dempsey for the most part. I don't see that. I think Bradley has the potential to be that, but I think, you and I have talked about this. Bradley's game has really slipped. I mean, he's a good defensive midfielder, but he gets exposed. He tends to make bad giveaways. I feel like Tim Howard isn't as good as he used to be. And as a goalie, I mean, what can he do? I mean, I feel like he could have made a lot. If he'd made a couple saves in this that he would have made, say, 3 years ago, I think, if, the team would have gone through. But, I look at the players from Europe that are coming in, other than Pulisic. And even Pulisic, he's a young guy. He doesn't understand. He's out there. Donovan at that age did similar things to what Pulisic is doing. He scored important goals, and he ran around like kind of a chicken with his head cut off. Pulisic is a better player than Donovan was at that age, but he's not in a position to lead the team to create that unity. And I feel like the team doesn't have that. And I think that largely is the result of, 6 years under Klinsmann pulling things apart. And if you look at the youth systems, that's continued to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that that Arena didn't make mistakes coaching. That doesn't mean that the players aren't culpable for losing. I mean, clearly it's their fault. They need to pull this together. But once again, if you look back at how do you prepare a team to be successful and put it in a position where you can be successful, U.S. soccer has not done that, and I think it's largely because we were pushing to play pretty soccer. We wanted to look like Europeans. We wanted approval from Europeans, so we didn't want to play the traditional style that we'd always played that had gotten us through. And the thing is, I believe we could have built on that style without forsaking it, and it just drives me crazy that we did. Anyway, I'm out of time. I want to hear about your roasting coffee. Let me know. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.